Hello and welcome. I am AJ, head of marketing at Parakeet, and in the nest with me today is a man who can save not only a life but a pipeline. He's crushed quotas, he's closed millions, he's built communities, he's coached reps, and he does it all without missing a beat as an account executive at Popl. Elmer Lopez, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me. And I love that intro. I actually didn't look at that beforehand. That's a good intro.
I'm glad it was a pleasant surprise then for you. But I'm sorry, I kind of have to do it. What has being an EMT taught you about B2B sales?
I would say it's funny enough, like right now I was applying to become an SDR or break into tech sales. I had to talk about my EMT experience because I didn't really have sales experience. What I would really talk about is like the pressure and knowing what to really say on the spot, or like just being able to handle that high pressure environment and not cracking, right? Which is kind of the same thing as being in sales on a cold call or in a demo where a prospect says something that's completely out of left field and you're like, okay, what should I say now? So having that ability to be in those high pressure environments, I think can be helpful to B2B sales, which is kind of funny.
Has your non-traditional sales background kind of shaped your philosophies? Obviously, you just mentioned like not cracking under pressure. I'm sure there's a lot of personality traits that certainly help when you're trying to not only push the deal forward but also close. But like, has it shaped any of your philosophies around selling?
Yeah. So I would say the biggest thing is learning, because there's always this debate, right? Like, should you even go to college or not? And for me, I'm not using my college degree. So you could say, like, oh, it was worthless. But at the same time, if I hadn't gone through the most grueling and toughest degree possible at the college I was going to, I was a biophysiology degree. I might have not gained the discipline that I have today that makes me a good seller, right? Maybe I wouldn't be as consistent as I am today. Or maybe I would burn out a lot quicker as a sales rep. But when you're in pre-healthcare and going for that biophysiology degree and going to these health classes back to back with like little to no breaks, studying for tests back to back, I think it teaches you that discipline and consistency and trying to survive burnout that helps you with like being in sales.
I too am not using the degree I went to college with, so I very much sympathize with you on that front. I want to dig a little bit more on that kind of burnout, and I've heard you talk about like one of the best things that a great rep, or how to take a good rep from a great rep, is building systems. What systems are you using, or do you implement to get you from good to great, and then also to kind of prevent that burnout?
I would say, for one, calendar blocking is obviously very important. I've always talked about that, making sure your brain's not scrambled eggs when you go into the day. And by that, I mean like you're literally just starting your day. You're like, okay, I have a billion things I can do. So let me do this for 5 minutes and then let me hop on to the other task for 10 minutes. It's like you're not going to get things done that way. You just need to lock in on one thing for a certain time frame and then move on to the next thing after that. That way, you know exactly what I need to do at this exact time. At the end of the day, you can only make so many decisions. Number two, to answer that question, is whenever you really do start to feel burnout, take that break. Like literally just go for that weekend, not look at your laptop. Because I know if you're in sales, you're looking at your laptop still. You're looking at your pipeline, you're trying to do some prospecting before Monday comes around. But if you're really feeling burnt out, then take that weekend break to like go somewhere, spend some time without even thinking about work whatsoever. For me, it's traveling somewhere for the weekend, maybe taking the Friday off too, and then coming back. And I just always felt hungrier than ever when I do that.
On top of the calendar blocking and obviously taking breaks, a good long walk outside goes a long way,
Oh, that
literally
too.
and figuratively. How are you structuring that week so you're not doing that, like bouncing from unproductive task to unproductive task?
Yeah. So it's different nowadays because as an AE, you have to move things around depending on like when you have your demos and those internal meetings. But as an SDR, what I would do was calendar block for the mornings at like to start doing like reading through my emails, responding to any emails. Then once it was time where I think it would be a good time where people would actually answer the phone, which I think is like lunchtime. That would be a good window to start cold calling. Then after that window breaks, I go ahead and do a little bit of LinkedIn outreach because around like 1 to like 3 p.m. is when people are pretty active on LinkedIn, is what I noticed. And then after that, I would do more cold outbound, like via cold calls, because people are probably on their way home from work, they're driving, so the chances of them answering are just going to be much higher, right? Once that window breaks, it's time to do more prospecting too. But you would have all these in calendar blocks. That way, you would know this is what I need to be doing. The only one where it does kind of jump a little bit is the cold calls, just because there are different windows that I think actually work for cold calling.
Does your structure or does your thinking change being on the West Coast when you're particularly cold calling prospects? Like, do you change your window to talk to East Coast clients or prospects, or how do you think about that?
I feel like everyone's prospects are mainly in the East Coast. Like most of these businesses, for some reason, are in the East Coast. So for the most part, I've always worked from the perspective of these businesses being in the East Coast. I haven't worked East Coast hours today, so I
Well,
think
that's it helps a little bit. You get to sleep in then.
a little bit.
So I want to hang around in that like kind of LinkedIn topic for a little bit because I've heard you talking about pitch slapping recently. Talk to me about how you think and go about the concept of pitch slapping and DMing people, and
Yeah,
how do you start a conversation with the goal of converting them and getting them onto a meeting with you?
it's funny because I know how much hate pitch slapping gets, and I used to hate on it too. And then I started testing out the waters again just to see, like, hey, how does it go if I make these messages as relevant as possible? Um, and it works. So, like I was talking about the other day, that I booked 8 meetings from pitch slapping on LinkedIn, and it wasn't a lie. I mean, I put all the screenshots within the video, but I think what matters for pitch slapping, it's that you're not sending it's not necessarily like a spray and pray approach where you're just sending it to everybody, right? I think relevance beats personalization over everything, because personalization just takes too long and that person might not even be in the market for what you're selling. Whereas relevance, if you have a pain that solves something within their job description or job title and it's relevant enough, they're actually going to be able to respond. And if they're in the market, they're going to respond.
So hovering around that relevancy there, where is the line between personalized and relevant? Because I know that personalized is still a bit of the buzzword. Everyone wants to send personal email and custom tailored, but like there is a difference between personalized and sending something that's relevant to somebody. So like, where is that line for you, and maybe how do you find out what exactly is relevant to somebody that you're reaching out to?
Yeah, for me, relevance is mainly via like the job title and the department that they're working in. I think it really depends on what you're selling, right? Maybe it depends on industry for you. But from my perspective, at least from all the software I've sold, it's always been like job title, department. Maybe if they're a new hire, I could talk about that as relevance. And you can do that in bulk still too. That doesn't have to be personalized because you could just put all new hires in the list with the same department, in the same job title, and reach out to those people. But I think that's what's most relevant. Like if I'm reaching out to marketers, it's going to be over here. Sales is going to be a different messaging. Executives is going to be a different messaging. Where I think spray and pray is that you send that same message to all of them without making it relevant at all, which is never going to get opened.
How much time do you spend crafting? Because you talked about segmenting them into different buckets appropriately. How much time do you generally spend A, on that kind of segmentation process, and then B, on the message that would then go with that segment?
Well, I would say the message, once you figure out what works and get some good responses out of it, you could just use the same message. This time I spend isn't very long. I feel like there's just so much different data points nowadays days that you can use, and just so many different workflows. Like you can literally create a workflow in any tool that you use today to push those specific job titles that you're targeting and put them into like a sequence. Like a lot of this can be automated. When I was an SDR, a few years ago, like that's when uh, maybe workflows existed and I just didn't know how to use it, but it was a lot more manual back then.
What type of sequences are you using now? If you're using any, is it kind of ad hoc, and you find somebody and this is your ICP, you reach out to them, or are you really building multi-step sequences that are multi-threading? Like how are you doing that these days versus how you were doing it beforehand?
Yeah. These days, it's more I would have them like an automated email sequence, and it'd just be 2 steps. So email 1, and then email 2 would be response. But that's because I have a large TAM. I think if you have a very small TAM, like a total addressable market, and you have a small like list of accounts in a territory, then that's a different story, right? You're going to be more strategic with your outreach. But I have a large total addressable market, so for me, if it's like they're not responding in those 2 emails that have been spread out, then I'm good to go to the next one, right? But when it comes to cold calls, I would add in a cold calling task in there as well, and it would be skipped after like a day if I don't touch it. That way, it would just go straight to the automatic email.
How much cold calling are you doing these days?
Not a crazy amount as before, I would say, but still doing it because I think it's
Is
important.
Yeah, which channel are you using most, and has that also shifted?
It kind of has, yeah, actually. I used to do super heavy cold calling, but nowadays, honestly, I feel like the Apple thing is actually messing things up. I know some people are like, oh, I don't think it's that big of a deal. But nowadays, when I call, it's like either Google Voice blocking me from getting through or Apple blocking me from getting through. And I get some gurus' perspectives of like, oh, just pitch within that. And if it's relevant, they'll answer. You have to test it out. So I can't argue on that. But it's definitely messing up the whole cold calling game because of the Apple blockers and now the Google Voice blockers. But email and LinkedIn has been like the main thing that has been working for me. Cold calling is still there. I'm not going to give up on it.
I thought all of this was dead. I thought cold email was dead and cold calling was dead, but now I'm hearing that email is working well for you. Why does that seem to be against the grain, from what I'm hearing and seeing these days? Like, are you doing something different with email, or are, do you just have it all figured out?
I would say like again, people just go a spray and pray approach and they don't make it relevant enough to the people that you're talking to. The way I look at like a subject line or the body of an email in general is if I was in this person's position, if I was their job title and had these specific responsibilities, would I open this? Right? That's the point of the subject line. Can I get the subject line good enough to hook them for them to open it? And as a creator, that's my job to hook people into a post. So I think of the same way to make an email. How can I hook this person so they actually open it? And then step 2 is how can I make this relevant enough to their job title and description where the pain is strong enough for them to respond? And that's something I work on as well. And obviously, if they're not in market, they might just not respond at all.
Do you have a process of uncovering that specific pain? Like, is it just really digging around their website? Is it mulling around on their LinkedIn page? When you're talking to a certain a segment of prospects, how do you try to uncover as nichely as possible that pain point that will resonate with them?
I think as AEs, you go through a lot of demos, and throughout those demos, you understand the specific pains that each title deals with. So that's kind of where I've gotten it in the past. For the SDRs out there, they could probably go listen to the AE's demos and get a pretty good understanding of it. I think that's something I didn't do much as an SDR, and I think SDR should do that more today to understand more of the pains that those specific job titles deal with. It would help them with the cold calls and with the emails and LinkedIn and any specific kind of outreach that they have to do.
So going back to kind of the outbound sequences, I kind of want to ask you about like the anatomy of a good sequence. Some people say you need 14 to 15 steps. Some say, just one channel at a time. Like, when you think about building a sequence, or at least nurturing kind of a bit of a segment of prospects, like, how do you think about doing that? And then also, because I know you work with a bunch of people and coaching them through, like, where do you think a lot of people get this stuff wrong?
I think people overthink it, and what really gets me aggravated is when somebody comes up to me and they're like, "Oh, do you think this will work?" I'm like, "Have you tested it?" They're like, "No, I haven't tested it." I'm like, "You have to test things. Like you just have to test it out. And if you see like a low, not many people responding, then and you're not getting that many meetings booked from it after like a week or 2 weeks, then maybe you gotta go change that up a bit." For me, I think it's just a matter of like literally testing things out. It's funny, our CEO says this all the time: launch, iterate, repeat. And I believe in that. Like you got to try things out, see if it works. And if it doesn't, then try again. And that's literally what you have to do: A B test everything. And then that's where you'll really understand what's a good successful sequence or not, without overthinking every single thing that you're putting in there.
With things changing so quickly these days, obviously, partially thanks to AI, but a number of factors, like are when you're thinking about the success of a test, what metrics are you looking at? Because obviously everyone wants to book a meeting and close a deal and whatnot, and obviously the metrics change per title here. But like, for how do you think about like what is a successful test in your mind
Yeah.
for whether it's a new channel or a new message?
Funny enough, I used to look at open rate and I got hounded on LinkedIn one time that I made a post about having a good open rate. And I was like, why is that not
How
good?
dare you?
Yeah, I was like, dude, my bad. Jeez, sorry for being human. Um, but honestly, I'm glad that I got hounded that time because then it was a learning lesson and I stopped looking at open rate. I don't even use open rate anymore as a metric. I turned it off because apparently it hurts deliverability.
Hmm.
Now it's more so of reply rate. And I think it depends on you, right? Like if you're an SDR, maybe you want a higher reply rate. But if you're an AE and you just want it to work on the side, I see nothing wrong with having a 1% reply rate and you're still getting booked meetings off of it if you're just doing it on the side, right? And you have it automated on the side and it's still getting you meetings on the board. If you're an SDR and that's your main job, maybe yeah, you should have a higher reply rate, but that's just my perspective.
Now, I've heard people also kind of complain and mull over reply rates as well, saying that, oh well, an unsubscribe counts as a reply, and no's, no thank you, go piss off, those also count. Like, do you think that that's a metric that also gets overinflated or maybe overhyped or even overlooked on the other side too? Like, but
Yeah.
where do you think about that?
Yeah, I could see that 100%. And going back to the metric piece that you mentioned, I guess it's more like for me, what I actually really look at is how many meetings have I actually booked from the sequence. If I'm actually booking meetings out of it, then I'm going to keep using it. That's my biggest metric. And then, yeah, reply rate, maybe it's not as reliable as we would want it to be because, like what you mentioned, but the booking the meetings is going to be like the true metric of what's working or not.
You've had the luxury of working at some larger brand names. Has your thought or approach changed when building an outbound motion for a smaller organization or a growing organization? Some place that doesn't have the backing of, say, like a Zoom Info.
Yeah, I would say Zoom Info is funny because people always talk about like, oh, if you're selling like a gong or Zoom Info, like it doesn't count because it's such an easy product to sell. Like that's the dumbest debate ever,
The
by the way.
product sells itself.
Yeah, it's the dumbest debate ever because there's so many competitors in the space. Like you would be going up against multiple competitors every single time you have those conversations. But here nor there, going back to your question, the brand can help because they'll see it. Like let's say I was selling a Zoom Info and they'll notice what it is, right? It can help you, but at the end of the day, you still have to sell the thing and get them to actually purchase, which is a whole different story. So I would say maybe to get them to actually book a meeting, it might be a little bit on the easier side because they have that brand awareness. But when it comes to booking a meeting for a startup, it's more of like really honing on to the pain. This is what we solve. This is how we do it. You probably never heard of us, but especially if you're like at a startup that's solving a revolutionary pain, I think that's super important too. People will actually respond, and that's what I think we're doing over here at Popl. So
Talk to me a little more about like how that response goes with something that is, a revolutionary. Like, does it require a sharper message so that there's that like aha moment to say, oh, okay, this is something cool, or is it just you're able to hit on those pain points so quickly and effectively that they're like, okay, well, I kind of have to hear you out now. I'm interested.
yeah, yeah. Like for my emails right now, it's mainly like me talking about the pain points they deal with today, and then talking about like, hey, this is how we solve it. Are you open to a quick chat? Just like a low ask CTA. Like, yep, we have time Tuesday, tomorrow, or something like that. Now I have an extra demo on the calendar. So that's pretty much the main approach today. I think it's really just showing them again, specifically to their title, what kind of pain that you can solve.
Obviously there's a lot of objections and pushbacks that come in this line of work. So in a competitive space, what are you some of first off, I guess, what are some of the more interesting pushbacks that you've heard, and maybe what are some of your favorites that like you like to come across because you go, okay, I've got an answer to this.
So we're in November right now, and right now it's people pushing you to 2026, right?
Mm.
And a lot of people will be like, "Oh, okay, like what's happening between now and 2026?" Right? That's like the main objection handling that people do, which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. I think it's more of the approach of, "Okay, I understand. When do you guys do your budget conversations, by the way?" "Oh, we actually have it at the end of November." Like, "Oh, okay. And you said this is a tool you guys could potentially use in 2026 and like it would solve XYZ problems?" Like, yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, wouldn't it make sense to have these conversations now and just see like if it would even fit within the 2026 budget? And then that's literally the framework that has been getting more meetings on the board. And at the end of the day, for deals too, speeding up the deal cycles.
The other objection that I think people come up against, right, is the automatic out of office messages, and we're in November now. I'm approaching December rather quickly, knowing that like winter, holiday times, and also summer, those are big out of office seasons. How does your strategy change, and how do you adapt to those infamous triple O messages?
Yeah. So this is a strategy that isn't really talked about often, actually. What I used to do over at ZoomInfo is that I would look up all the countries that didn't celebrate the specific holidays. Like Thanksgiving isn't celebrated by all other countries, of course.
Hmm.
So I would go ahead and start reaching out to like the UK and start trying to book meetings in the UK or start trying to book meetings from other countries that just don't celebrate those specific holidays. But at the end of the day, if you have to work and still hit a number, there's still ways to do it.
Yeah, that's a creative solution there. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So all right, so we've gotten through the sequences. You've pushed past and have gotten through a few objections. You got a meeting on the calendar. Now you're talking with somebody. How can you quickly uncover the kind of true and real buying intent of a prospect to make sure that they're actually going into this with good faith and not wasting anybody's time?
I think it's a lot about being genuinely curious about their specific role and understanding the responsibilities and then aligning your solution to whatever pain points they have in their role, right? Which is something you have to cover during the discovery, understanding what kind of pain points they're really dealing with within that role that they have today and what are they even responsible for, right? So I think that's what's going to be super important. And then seeing, like, of course, your own like qualifying questions that you have at your own company. One framework that I like always is spiced. I'm sure everyone's
Okay.
heard of the SPICE framework, but I do think like a critical event is super important to understand like if this is a real, are we talking to a real deal here or not? Because I've heard some people say this, like you can create a critical event with them, but if they have a critical event that's like, okay, we're merging our CRMs, so we need this specific tool to help us clean up and enrich the data to make sure the data isn't bad. That's a critical event, right? So for your specific tool or whatever software you're selling, find that critical event. And if they have it, find out when that critical event needs when they need your tool before that critical event, and then that's how you could speed the deal velocity.
Do you think that you can manufacture critical events? Like, do you think that there's a way in the narrative of selling that you can, um, obviously not lie, but kind of, pitch it in a way where it's like this is a bigger deal than it needs to be to kind of help the deal along?
Yeah, I think again, like being at a startup, you have to educate some of these people of a pain that they didn't realize they were just dealing with because they thought it was the norm, right? So that's where you start to create the critical event of, hey, if you don't solve this by more of like a cost of inaction, right? If you don't solve this by XYZ timeframe, you're losing XYZ in revenue. Is that worth holding off on a tool like this, right? So you can curate it, and I understand why people say it. So it's more of like, can they actually see the cost of inaction? And do they understand like, hey, like this is something we need or else we're going to continue like leaking revenue. But if they're completely numb to it and they're completely okay with what they're doing today, then that's going to be a problem throughout the sales cycle.
The cost of inaction is a kind of an interesting one, because you kind of have to you have to convince somebody to take an action on something that's not already taking place. versus something that's like, we have an issue today, we need a solution. Is having that current pain an easier path forward because they're currently experiencing it? Or do you think you can also find enough justification for the cost of inaction if the messaging is strong enough?
Yeah, I think obviously if there's a critical event, it's 100% going to be easier. Like for us, we're selling universal lead capture. So if they have an event coming up in the next month and they need a solution before that event that they're going to have, then that's a strong critical event for us to speed the deal. But if there's no specific event coming up and it's like more so of showing them the cost of inaction, not going to be as quick of a deal necessarily, but you could still push the narrative of like, hey, there's still revenue leakage here.
So for on those cost of inaction type deal cycles, I'm sure you get to a point where it kind of feels like it stalls out, loses a little bit of momentum. Is there a way that you try to kickstart that or get that back into gear, so that you can kind of close the loop on that, knowing that like this is a company and a prospect that like would really get a ton of value out of what we do?
Yeah, I think sometimes the cost of inaction won't land well with specific lower level titles because they don't see that the revenue is being linked. They're not high enough to see it. So sometimes it's multi-threading and bringing in someone of a higher title that's like, oh crap, like they'll understand it because they're behind the numbers all the time.
Bring in the one who's cutting the checks, who's actually
Exactly.
losing out on that money.
Exactly. And
um,
they'll understand it. Like I've had CROs where they're like, "Oh wow, you have a good point. Like we are losing XYZ in revenue. Like even if you guys save us one deal or whatever, like we're going to be able to pay for this within itself."
mm. Obviously, that phrase right there, you've got a good point. That must feel like, okay, we got him. The hook is set in. We're it's only downhill momentum from here on out. How do you get that feeling more often during, or when do you know? Like what other points of kind of the cycle hit when you go, okay, I think we got him.
It's tough because as an AE, you're always going to be pessimistic, or as a salesperson, you always got to be pessimistic, right? Like you're going into a forecasting call and then you're saying, "Oh yeah, this deal's going to close. They told me they'd sign tomorrow." Then they don't sign for a whole month and now you look like an idiot. So for me, I always feel the same no matter what I hear because it's hard to trust anything that a prospect says. You'll have prospects come out of a call and be like, "Oh, we're going to buy this. Like we need this." And then you realize, okay, yeah, this might not actually happen.
Salespeople in general, right? Like, got to be a shark. You got to be aggressive. You got to get the deal over the line. Smile and dial, pound the phones, et cetera, et cetera. How do you keep that pressure on without losing the deal, but also without like losing the trust of the prospect?
I think value sends are super important. And a value send is like a non call to action email that you send to the prospect. And you remember, like, okay, they talked about this on the call that's really important to them. Maybe it's like a HubSpot integration or something like that. By the way, here is how this specific company that worked with us used our HubSpot integration to gain XYZ revenue or something. Something along those lines, right? That's just
Mhm.
relevant to them and it will add value and would help them think about your company. And you just say, hope this helps with the internal conversations. Boom. You send them a case study. Oh, by the way, this is exactly how XYZ company hit XYZ revenue using our product. Hope this helps with internal conversations. It's never asking for anything at the end of the email. I'll even send screenshots of somebody on LinkedIn commenting, talking about how much they love our product, and it just helps out with the deal cycle in general. Because for one, you're not being pushy, like, "Hey, when's that DocuSign coming in? When's that DocuSign coming in?" You're still keeping like your product or software top of mind because they're going to see that email, and that way, like the deal cycle doesn't completely lose the momentum.
Got it. So keeping up on those kind of like low pressure touch points of, hey, I'm here. Don't forget about me. Don't forget
Yep.
about these conversations. Um, Obviously, I love the idea of the value added, something that we preach on our side as well. Of like, don't treat every interaction as a quote unquote pitch slap. Um, when you think about these types of low pressure, almost non asking type of follow ups, does it always have to be in your mind like related to the product, the business, the type of endeavor of the deal, or sometimes is it worth following up with a little bit of a personal flair of like, hey, I mentioned, I hope your daughter's recital goes well
Yeah.
this weekend, or like, good luck in your men's soccer league. What those types of little anecdotes that pop up. Are
Yeah.
those worth the time, or are those just wasted energy?
I think it depends on the relationship you've created with that prospect. Like I've had really good relationships with some prospects where it's like, yeah, I'm definitely going to send you a message about this football game. And it just helps create that rapport and it keeps you top of mind. So it's a win win situation. But if you don't really have that rapport with that prospect, then it might feel a little random to them. But that's just the way I've done it.
So yeah, so saying go Stanford Bulldogs or whatever, and you've never talked about football with them is probably a no-go, I would say.
Yeah, that would be maybe it could work for you. I've never tried it on a random prospect. But if it's somebody that I have good rapport with, I'm probably going to do that.
I see it. I mean, I'm sure you get it even more than I do, but I get it all the time on LinkedIn of people pulling out like the craziest stuff and trying to relate, and it's like, where did you get this information from? But and now, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm curious about like when you're sending messages and you're connecting with people, whether it's to actually prospect or even just kind of build a relationship, like what's your messaging strategy? Is it lowercase? Is it first name only? Is it a nickname? Like, do you have a framework that you kind of use to not come off as like a weirdo creep trying to sell?
Via LinkedIn or email, because I feel like
LinkedIn. Yeah, LinkedIn specifically here.
I think making it. I mean, making it not sound automated is important for sure, and
So
making
no
it
no
not
M
sound
dashes.
making it not sound like AI is going to be important. I mean, for me, it's all lower cases, and then I throw in some LOLs in there, some ha-has, so it makes it seem like I'm definitely not AI. But you want to make it seem like it's a real message as possible. Just making it pretty short. Like you don't want to like have like a long paragraph of a message, or else they're not going to read it. It's like a LinkedIn post. Like I'm always going to say, it's like if it's blocks of text, people aren't going to read it. So you got to space it out. So I think that's going to be important for the messaging as well.
We've talked email, we've talked LinkedIn, we've talked cold calling. Do you use any other channel for either prospecting or like maybe research or anything like that? Because I know that we've been using kind of Reddit and YouTube as other channels to explore, more so on that like educating the prospect and the potential buyer there. But interested, like, do you use any other channels?
I think Reddit's genius. I haven't used it well myself, but I've already thought of some ideas of what I would do on Reddit. I know some people, what they do is they'll create like a fake post on Reddit and then create this engagement farming where people will start engaging with it, and it ends up pushing people to your website and things like that. You push ads to them specifically because they were on your Reddit. So I think that's genius. I haven't done it personally. For the other strategies, I would say in-person conferences and in-person events. I think that's super important nowadays, especially with all the AI noise. Because when you go to a conference or an event, you have all this opportunity to talk to anybody and everybody that's at the conference, right? Like I just went to my first conference for Dreamforce a few months back, and I was literally amazed at seeing our BDRs just going up to like a big enterprise company and booking a meeting with a head of marketing who it would be extremely difficult to do via email or via cold call because they probably get so much noise, and going to book a meeting with like a startup founder or a head of marketing at a smaller company, right? You have the equal amount of opportunity to book as many meetings as possible at a conference floor or event floor, which I think is going to be a huge strategy in the future for more of these companies.
Yeah, I've been hearing more and more that in-person events are back. They're back in full force. Naturally, because again, AI. Unfortunately, AI gets such a bad rap in a lot of aspects for selling, right? Because I mean, there's so much garbage that's pushed
Yeah.
out. So being a human, whatever that means, but being as real and as authentic as you can is becomes so much more paramount these days. So it makes total sense that the in-person events are a gold mine for these things. Now, when it comes to the strategy, the stakes are a little bit higher because you're actually face to face to person. You don't have the lag of an email or anything like that. But how do you think about those types of conversations? Does it change at all than something like a discovery call?
Everyone's strategy is different because another conference that I went to where we hosted a booth, that was a little bit different when people just come up to you and then you have a casual conversation. For my strategy, when I go to an event, I'll even just go up to a booth in general that I was interested in because I see their product and I just have a casual conversation with them. And then everyone asks you, "What do you do? Where do you work at?" It makes it so easy for me to just pull up my Popl app because that's what we're selling, and I show them, have them scan my show them that I can scan their conference badge with their full name and company, enrich all the data, push it straight to the CRM. Now, that's my strategy, but when I've seen the BDRs do it, they're insane. They go back to back. They're getting meetings back to back. It's crazy. For me, it's more of the natural conversation approach. And I think everyone's approach is going to be different depending on who you are.
I mean, myself as the introverted marketer, I very much appreciate that. That is definitely my. We had one in person event this year, and I agree. It's just being in the same space, even if it's low volume of bodies. It's just kind of rubbing elbows and exactly what you said. Like, oh, what do you do? And the next thing you know, a conversation spirals, and
Yeah.
you're like, oh yeah, I am having those issues. Um, I want to switch gears a little bit because I know that you do a lot of coaching and some mentorship as well, and obviously you've got a lot of different areas where you talk about like sales leadership as well. What I mean, we might have touched on this a little bit before, but for the sake of asking the question again in this lens, where do you like what are the most common bad habits that you see sellers have today?
I think going back to like when you asked me about the bad habits for sellers when it comes to sequences, it would be them overthinking everything before acting on it. And I think a lot of sellers do that today. They're just thinking, will this work? And then they continue to work on that specific messaging or specific template to cold call or whatever. And they're just thinking, will this work? But you really just got to fail forward and keep trying. And then you'll figure out what will work and you'll continue to adjust. Like I had this very conflicting take where I said F mock cold calls. And I said that more so because some people will overthink their cold calls and just keep doing the mock cold calls and then never do the thing. But the importance of actually doing the thing is the biggest of importance so you can actually learn how to do it.
Yeah, we have a lot of we have a healthy SDR function under our roof, and people are always shocked and sometimes amazed that we're like, no, we have our new SDRs calling day one, like they've got like maybe 2 hours of kind of an onboarding, like, hey, here's kind of the ropes, and then like
Yeah.
also here's your headset, like you're gonna do the thing because it's
Yeah.
that's how you learn. So I very much agree with that sentiment, and it proves time and time again that seems to be the most effective way is to kind of quote fail fast there.
Yeah.
Um,
And I actually think that's the best way to onboard. Again, it depends on your TAM, right? If you have a
sure.
small TAM and you're trying to be careful and you have to be more strategic, I get it. So for those people, don't attack me. I get it. If you have a large TAM, then just get after it. Start. That's like the best way to learn. Get on the phones day one that you get that new role. Even as an AE, get on the phones day one of that new role, and you start learning more about the objections that you're going to be handling and what kind of pain points these people are actually dealing with, right? I think that's the best way to onboard versus watching a 2-hour video that you retain maybe 1% of it.
I know Kyle, our head of sales, when he hears this, he's gonna geek out over because anytime we have a prospect that comes in that says like, and they've got a massive TAM, and he just loses his mind, and I'm like, I know, there's a lot of potential here, so it checks out. We get to learn very quickly, and which means we get to fail fast. But going back to the kind of coaching and the reps, right? Like, is there what are reps not doing right now that they should be doing to take them to the next level?
Yeah, so for those people trying to move up to the next level, I've always said this, but corporate politics is obviously going to
Mm.
play a game, especially at bigger companies. At a startup, everybody knows you, so it's a little bit different, I guess. But corporate politics, when it comes to a pretty big company, If there's leadership that doesn't even know your name, that's probably a problem. Even if you're a top performer, at the end of the day, like if you don't have that rapport, then that's going to be an issue. I've talked to people plenty of times where they were a top performer, but this other person had better rapport with the leadership, and the leader ended up choosing that person who had better rapport for the promotion, right? But if you can do both, you're a top performer and you have that good rapport with the leader. Now the chances of you getting promoted are much higher, right? Now number two is like actually showing that you could do the role. Maybe asking, hey, can I close some of these smaller deals that the AE isn't working because the deals are just too small, and I'll make sure I'm still hitting my number. That's something that I had done in the past at one of my previous roles as an SDR, which helped me get my role as an AE because I hopped from one role as an SDR to AE to a different
Mm.
company. And that's something that I don't hear many SDRs doing. Like if it's a small ACV that the company doesn't care about because he's too busy with other deals, then why not just ask and see if it's even possible, right?
Taking that initiative and being proactive in a lot of areas goes a long way. Do you think? Obviously, again, I've said this a couple times now, but like you're active on LinkedIn. I know you also have a YouTube channel as well. Like you yourself are building and have a personal brand. Does that help push things forward, whether it comes to like actual closing deals and moving pipeline, and also kind of climbing the corporate ladder here?
I think climbing the corporate ladder, like I said, at a big company, like at a Zoom Info. When I first met Henry Schuck at President's Club and I shook his hand, he's like, "What's up, Elmer?" I was like, "Whoa, whoa, you know my name?" He's like, "Yeah, man, you're all over LinkedIn. You make us look good or whatever. Like, you're all over." And I'm like, "Oh crap, that's awesome!" Like, so I think that does help because especially if you're making the company look good and you're bringing in leads for the company because you're posting about the company, then I think it could help you out. I think in general, it helps you bring in leads for yourself. And if the company sees that, maybe the leaders will be like, okay, this guy's doing something that's benefiting the company and bringing brand awareness to LinkedIn, which is where all our buyers are. So I think it does help in a way.
That's cool. And then I'm always interested about the headspace of sellers and listen, marketers as well, but that's a whole nother category in podcast. But like at the end of the month, at the end of the quarter, when the numbers go back to zero, how do you stay motivated to continue to chase and prospect and do it all over again?
I'll just talk about my perspective of what motivates me really, but I'm pretty money motivated. I'm not gonna lie. So like if I have a goal of what I want to purchase in my life, like one of my biggest goals was to purchase my first condo before I became 27 or something like that. I think it was 27. I purchased my first one when I was 26, and I was able to achieve that goal because I was always hungry the next quarter, the next month. Okay, I need to purchase this condo. I need to close XYZ number of deals to get this amount of money to get me to that goal. So I feel like having that outside financial goal that you want to hit helps you internally. At least that's what's worked for me. I know it's different for everybody, but that's just the way it's worked for me.
I very much appreciate not only the time, but obviously all the information here. You're an expert in the field, so I appreciate you taking all this time to kind of sit, chat with me, espouse this information. Where can people find you, Popl, all the etc. Where should we follow you?
Yeah. Follow me on LinkedIn, Elmer Lopez, obviously just on LinkedIn. On other socials, you can find me on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, elmerlopez.tech. Pretty easy to find. And then for Popl, you can go ahead and find it at popl.co, or just hit me up and I'll help you out.
Perfect, perfect. Well, Elmer, thank you again. We'll link everything below, and this was a blast, man. Thank you.
Thanks, AJ. I appreciate it.